Welcome to Conversations, where it's pleasure to welcome to the program Tom Keily, and he is the co-founder of the INN World Report, a television program that had been co-founded with Lenny Charles some time back, and I wanted him to talk about that after you get around to introducing himself. But that was a major thing, and he's now the INN World Report Radio that he's doing, and he's a person of great understanding and political savvy and so forth. And Tom, welcome so much again to the Conversations. Such a pleasure.
Well, thank you very much for having me back, Harold.
No, it's great. I wonder maybe you could I mentioned it, Lenny, and your thing, the INN World Report. That was a major television venture that was going for, maybe you could spell it, when that was and how it got going and how long. It was on the air over television.
7 years. Over 7 years.
7 years is a long time. Yeah. When did you all put that together? At Walker Theater downtown?
Yes. The effort to make our own alternative media, our own, meaning our group, came out of the theft of the 2000 election.
Oh, boy, yeah.
Yeah, so a lot. It was probably the first major event that spurred electronic media and activism. It was back in just 2000, and by then people were using the internet a great deal and email and so forth. Yeah. And many groups sprang up across the country to bolster the democratic process.
Yeah, right.
And in that effort, I met Lenny Charles, who had a television studio downtown.
Yeah, how did you happen to meet, if it could?
Yes.
That was a major thing. Lenny, you guys had a really
Lenny
good thing
going. Lenny had a TV studio downtown where he was doing production.
Had a whole building.
Yeah, well, he and his partner had a building. They rented it, and then they eventually bought it. And they were producing video down there for musicians and also for commercials and things.
Yeah.
And Lenny had been also helping Amy Goodman get her early video version of her program out.
He did exactly that. I remember that. He was there, and he was getting Democracy Now!
Out to Colorado, where it was put up on satellite on the Free Speech TV channel of the Dish Network satellite system.
And how long ago was that?
This was in the year 2000.
In the year 2000, the time of
2000 and then into 2001.
Into the 2001, after the election and everything.
Right.
And that's when a whole lot of things that we take for granted were just in the formative stage. And he was right in on that. He knew how to do it. And he was getting Amy up using the interconnection and the internet and everything.
He was using, ended up using satellite to get it out to them. And then it was broadcast on satellite. But you're right, this was when a major explosion in digital technology was just starting, because in those days we were still sort of using analog and tape, and then we're changing over to digital.
Yeah, it was all going. And then you had that running for a long time, 7 years, did you say?
Yes.
You were producing it there at the studio.
In Walker Street down in Tribeca, right 1/2 mile north of Ground Zero, practically exactly north of Ground Zero, the World Trade Center. And because of his effort in helping Free Speech TV get Amy Goodman's program to them, he had it in there, and he pitched the idea for a show, and they said fine. And then he and I worked together for about a year to put together a few promos, and then they liked it. And then 9/11 happened, and that set us back. So rather than getting on the air in 2001, it took another few months, and it wasn't until 2002. But once we were on, we had a weekly 1-hour news and information magazine program.
It was a weekly thing,
And then we switched.
Good programming.
Then we switched in 2004 to a daily.
That's what it was.
When the Republicans came to town for their convention at Madison
That's the
Square.
same year that we couldn't go to Central Park because we were going to trample the grass.
They
wouldn't let us go to Central Park because you're going to harm the grass.
Right.
Yeah, what a joke. But Lenny, and you were you on camera as well?
I used to do many of my speciality. What I really like to do is to do what you do. To take advantage of the opportunity to not only educate myself but educate the public at the same time. This is an open university.
Yeah, right. I like the idea.
You know the idea, right?
Yeah, sure,
You've been
absolutely.
doing it better than anybody for many,
I've been
years.
doing it a long time. You know, there's some others really do it really good, but that's good. And you were doing that, and so that was a fun thing. There was a lot of work involved.
A lot of hard work.
And that was that being distributed by Free Speech TV?
Yes, it was being broadcast by Free Speech TV. We would put our program together and then send it to Colorado via satellite.
That's where they are. Is that Denver? Or is it?
At the time, they were in Boulder. They're in
Boulder,
Denver
right
now.
outside of Denver. Yeah, they're in Denver now. Yeah, I know some of the people that got that started. I think there were a couple of people from here that got involved in that group that makes up Free Speech TV.
Yeah.
And now they're very, very. They got a whole lot of people in their stable. Now they've got Democracy Now! Is a big thing that goes all over the place. I guess it goes all over the world. That's a major venue.
Originally out of the Pacifica network.
Well, it was all out of Pacifica Network, yeah.
Yes, originally out of the Pacifica network.
I hear Pacifica may be in trouble.
I
mean, economic trouble.
Yeah.
And the whole, not only Pacifica, all 5 stations of Pacifica are in trouble. Have you got any inside track on where that stands?
May, being a New Yorker, WBAI is here in New York and so forth. And I have heard a lot of things, much of which I have no reason to doubt, but I don't know that it's appropriate to get in on the subject right now. It's kind of sensitive.
Well,
let me just put it like this.
I would just think of it as a citizen, because it's a great service.
Well, let me just put it like this. I hear that the Pacifica Network is in great trouble. However, what was or became their flagship program, Democracy Now!, doesn't seem to be in any kind of trouble whatsoever. So
Democracy Now! Is flying high.
That's right.
And it's in television, and it's all over the world,
and
I think.
Started on Pacifica, which is not flying high anymore.
Was that when they were down at the firehouse? Amy, we used to be down at the firehouse.
I think it started out on the radio, Democracy Now!, probably down at BAI before the firehouse.
Right.
The video was starting down.
I think she says every day, BAI comes with Democracy. WBAI comes in. Anyway, and then you did that and you ran it for 7 years. That's a long time.
A lot of hard work.
How many programs did you all put together? And what were you, did you have an overall theme, an overall idea, or anything that
my partner Lenny was very interested in doing news. Yeah. Which is difficult to do if you don't have a staff of reporters. So we would collate. A lot of people do it now.
Yeah, now you could get printing. Yeah.
We would collate stories that we got over the internet and put our own graphics up with them. I am more interested in what you do, and that's what I did. So I arranged, and we had a couple of other very talented people working with us. Yeah. And
you mean on camera?
Yes.
Okay.
And also putting the show together and getting guests and so forth.
Yeah, so. Right.
So I did some news reading, but mostly I did interviews.
Yeah, well, and and what was the tack? Oh, there's a lot of interviews you can do. There's 7 billion people in the world. A lot of people you could do an interview with. What kind of things were you focusing on, you and Lenny, in terms of the overall thrust of the venture?
Well, I think the corporate media does a fine job covering what it covers. Yeah. Okay, and so there was no need to try to compete with that. Yeah. A, because they have more money than the almighty to do it. Yeah, right. But B, they also don't cover a lot of really, really important information, and that's what we dedicated ourselves to doing, to being the witness in the forest, so that if somebody did something pretty amazing, it would be heard by people rather than the tree falling without being heard. Number one. Yeah, right. And number two, we just felt that we did not want to be partisan in our approach either. So transpartisan was a major.
Transpartisan? You mean you didn't want to be all left? Or something. Or what do you mean
transpartisan?
Be ecumenical, maybe, or reach out to a lot of different
ideas.
Probably more
ecumenical. Yeah. We were just speaking with the gentleman from the Left Forum there. And,
that's Seth Adler, nice guy. Yeah.
Very nice.
They're putting that Left Forum together. Yeah.
Very nice. And and I think he got it wrong when I mentioned to him our concept of transpartisan. I don't mean that it means a pox on both your houses. Yeah. What it means is that unfortunately there's an orthodoxy that comes up if you're a dyed-in-the-wool conservative or a dyed-in-the-wool lefty, then you can't talk to those other people over on the other side.
That's a problem
It's a
in the
major
society in general. Yeah.
And it's been a problem.
And in the media, yeah.
It's been a problem that's been cultivated, aided and abetted, I think, by oligarchy, which perhaps we can go into.
Yeah, I want to talk about oligarchy as a reality, yeah.
But, that's why INN got into it. We said to ourselves, well, who do we think we are to be trying to step up to the plate when luminaries like Democracy Now! Have been doing this for so long? And we took stock, and it was our determination that Democracy Now! And shows like that were content to preach to the converted. Okay, that they were not reaching out in a transpartisan fashion.
Okay, transpartisan is a word. That's not. Would you include? Amy Goodman would be seen as the left.
Right, and I don't see where she makes an effort to communicate with anybody who isn't seen as being in the left. I could be wrong.
Well, no, it seems that way. It seems that way, and that's one way for people to be. But then there are all kinds of other ideas that could be somewhere else other than in the certified left.
Yeah, I mean, what happens is
to their ideology,
an orthodoxy builds up, and people take sides, and it's almost reduced to professional wrestling or something.
Well, it is like that now, isn't it? I mean, it's ridiculous, back and forth, and all that kind of stuff.
But I've learned a great deal from dedicated, patriotic libertarians and conservatives and so forth,
as well as people that were in the left. A lot of my friends are all over there.
I have no patience for people on either side that are content to just remain on their side and castigate the other side.
Would you think that's the case with the programming of Democracy Now! I don't want to put you on the spot, that it does stay to one side, or the advertising that goes with it and everything like that, or the left forum itself?
I can't say about the left forum, and and I've seen Democracy Now! Programs like that. I think that's their bread and butter, talking to a certain mindset.
Well, then you have others on the right. You got Fox News and everything. They have bread and butter on the other side, and ad revenues or popularity or so forth.
And now you've got MSNBC, which sort of is taking up the gauntlet that Fox lays down, and then that's for the left. And but still, I'm very disappointed by a lot of the people on MSNBC.
What about your own background? Where were you born and raised, and what are your political or your ideological or your intellectual proclivities that came out of your early youth and all of that?
I was born and raised about 14 miles east of here on Long Island, and in the halcyon days.
Yeah, halcyon.
The great halcyon days of the American middle class.
Yeah.
Which we erroneously thought were here to stay.
Yeah.
And that it was economic and cultural evolution. That this was the promise of our way of life.
That sort of emerged out and after the Second World War with some really good times.
Yes, and unfortunately,
the economy was expanding.
It's quite apparent now that it was all a hoax. That it was.
Oh, you think? Okay, go ahead.
Sure,
go ahead. No, we can talk about it. Yeah.
Because it's being taken back. It's being removed. And upon contemplation, I come up with the formula that apparently this was all created to combat Soviet communism.
Well, that was the big issue that grew up. Yeah.
Right. And now that Soviet communism is gone, all the goodies are being taken back. And oligarchy oligarchy is thriving like never before in history. The 0.01% having way more now than they even had before the Great Depression, and sucking up more wealth all the time.
Did you go to college in that and everything?
I went maybe a total of a couple of years, but what I was really interested in, the two areas that I seem to have excelled in, computer science, which was very young and nascent at the time.
You were into that?
Well, I ended up getting into it, yes. I taught myself, a little help from my father, who was an engineer. But also Buddhist philosophy, particularly Tibetan Buddhist philosophy.
Wow.
So I studied
what just happened.
Directly under a monk for a long time, and that's through learning philosophy, and in particular the Tibetan system of logic. I was able to parlay that into making a living at computers.
Really, that's interesting. It's terrible what just happened there. The earthquake.
Horrible.
Horrible. Maggie, you know Maggie, my friend, she's been there and all that, and we lived in India. She was just crying. She was really heartfelt. It was a terrible thing there. Well, that's really interesting. There's a lot to be learned there in that. So you went with that. How many were you guys able to keep those programs on file and archived and everything like that?
Lenny's got them all on file. Yes.
He does.
Yeah.
How many were there? Did you ever come up with a number? There must have been thousands.
Well, 5 days a week for, let's see, it must have been 5 years, once a week for 2 or 3 years. We didn't have a show every week or every day of every week. There were holidays and things like that.
Yeah, right.
I got a chance to meet a lot of really interesting people. I've interviewed Daniel Ellsberg and
wow, what a hero!
Very, very interesting.
He's one of my real heroes. Yeah.
Daniel Ellsberg, James Bamford, the expert on the national, the NSA.
Yeah.
And, Stephen Kinzer, New York Times bureau chief in Berlin and Istanbul, wrote the book Overthrow and all the Shah's men, detailing the 1953 coup.
Overthrow, right.
A lot of great people. Yeah. A lot of great people. And I continue to meet great people because out of our television effort, I was asked to do a radio show, which I've been doing for almost 8 years now.
Okay, all of that. But then that kept you intellectually engaged and everything like that by you have to read up in order to talk to the person that was coming on and so forth. And you kept your nose to the grindstone. No, your ear to the wind. I forget the metaphor.
Intellectually sharp.
You kept your finger in the air. I don't know. I mean, in terms of what was going on with the human condition, politically and otherwise.
Intellectually sharp, but also
intellectually,
it kept me sane and from throwing my shoe at the television. Because now, the really, really bright people, you don't get the juice, you don't get the money. If oligarchy doesn't approve of what you're talking about, you don't get the juice, you don't get the money. You know? And a lot of the foundation-funded left, we call it, or the foundation-funded...
Foundation-funded left.
Yes,
yeah, go ahead.
To create controlled opposition.
Controlled opposition to the established way.
Well,
or as is moving.
Controlled opposition is a group or a venue or even a person who appears to be it's kind of like the loyal opposition. It appears to be in opposition, but really never gets to really get a blow in. Lay a glove on the problem. And typically what happens is, in this concept, they receive funds.
From the opposition.
From the oligarchy.
From the oligarchy, yeah.
We're going to talk about that. You ever heard of a little thing called the Ford Foundation?
The Ford Foundation's huge.
It's huge and named after one of America's greatest oligarchs, isn't it?
Well, Henry Ford and Edsel Ford, I think, were involved. That's the biggest one of them all.
It's a big one. And
it's a behemoth in its own.
And so many others. But do you think that such a foundation is going to give serious money to a serious effort to challenge serious oligarchy? I rather doubt it.
Well, I'm wondering about that. We're a big term, oligarchy, or a view of societal organization and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
What do we mean by that, I wonder? And I wonder, I just tend to think, as you know, we've had a lot of talks and things. Mm-hmm. I tend to think about things in historical terms and everything. Mm-hmm. It seems to me, in a certain sense, or let's get to a dictionary definition of it, or a contemporary definition of it, but it seems to me like throughout all of, civilized human history, it's always been, in a certain sense, with some variation in that, an oligarchy.
I think oligarchy is a constant presence.
You think, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
and back to my understanding of what the word means, rule by the few.
Yeah. But hasn't it always been?
Sure.
Okay.
The problem is
it gotten worse? Has it gotten? It's being addressed, the oligarchy in the contemporary.
You know what I think, Harold? Like everything else, it's organic and it waxes and wanes. Okay?
Yeah.
I think it's always there, and there's two characteristics of it that change a good deal, or maybe three. The size of who's in the oligarchy, let's just say, the power that it has, and the visibility that it has. Those three quotients seem to change all the time. currently it's got a great deal of power and relatively small visibility, but that's changing because their actions are, the problems are just too great to keep hidden under the rug anymore.
That's interesting. That's interesting in itself at this particular time. What would have been the situation 1,000 years of Rome?
Well,
I mean, you had an oligarchy.
That was sure.
You know what I'm saying?
The Roman Republic was founded because the Roman oligarchs were killing each other off, right? And they decided, hey, let's call a truce, and nobody will be the boss, and we'll have a senate, and we'll all have a say, and we'll pick the consul.
That was moving along a line. I think it probably was worse under Pharaoh. I mean, the Pharaoh had been a civilization and an oligarchy. Mm-hmm. I don't know, Nebuchadnezzar maybe early, and then let's go along the wheel of history and say for 1,000 years after the fall of Rome, you had hereditary families in Europe. The kings were there, hereditary families, and you had them living in a castle eating off golden plates, and the serfs were wallowing around in the mud.
Yeah, what happened?
There was oligarchy
after the Pax Romana, right? When that all broke down.
Yeah, 1,000 years.
A lot of former Roman military officers out in the provinces became local oligarchs, didn't they?
I guess that's true.
Yes, and that's how the feudal system started. I think that strong men, with their. Do you remember the first castles? They were these stone towers, right? Mm-hmm. They were called keeps.
Yeah, the castle keep. Well, the castle, that would be part of the castle where you repaired to when you had to.
First they were towers called a keep, and then they built walls around them, so castles had a keep in the center. Right. That's where the oligarch kept his loot.
Yeah, right, right.
I think,
Well, yeah, I think of it as a retreat in the case of attack or something, but that was a redoubt you could go to.
Who's attacking?
Well, I don't know.
Oligarchs gone wild.
Well, no, but you would have you got all the Germanic and other, or you got the royal families coming, and it was about 1,000 years.
Well, that's the consolidation of oligarchy into the European aristocracy.
After the fall of Rome, you had about 1,000 years where Europe, at least in that part of the world, was ruled by hereditary families, the great houses of kings and so forth.
But I think they started off relatively small and
probably.
And then what happened was they started knocking each other off.
After 300 or 400 or so, it was chaos.
When you soak your local population for all the blood you can squeeze out of it, the only economic growth you have is to go knock off the guy next door. Okay.
Right.
And if you go down the Rhine, or if you drive along northern Italy to travel from Venice to Torino, let's just say, you'll see that there's a castle.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a castle on a hill, and by the time you're driven down the highway and that's gone, there's another one.
Yeah.
And then there's another one.
Yeah.
And these were the locals, and then they become subsumed by what eventually becomes the great houses of Europe.
Yeah. Right. And those were passed down by hereditary, the birth of this and that.
But it's the mafia, right?
My name is Harold.
Feudal system.
My name, they had a feudal system for about 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And you had serfs, and it was oligarchy, and the people are in the castle eating off golden plates.
Right.
And the mass of the people were like serfs or slaves
on
almost.
Subsistence.
And on subsistence and very grim and everything. Right. So the point being, oligarchy's always been there, I guess.
Absolutely.
So, and then we get to steam engine. United States make a revolution.
Before that, the steam engine, I think, came after the American Revolution.
Well, 1776, they both came at the same time.
Okay, all right.
And then, and you had that. So then you had heralding an industrial revolution and a revolution across the Atlantic from Europe, and that began to spell the end of the feudal system as we set up a system with our Declaration of Independence and all of that and everything.
Well, thereon lies the problem, doesn't it? First of all, the feudal system is still there. Okay.
Oh, you want to see it as a feudal system?
Well, the Queen of England is one of the greatest oligarchs around, I would think.
Well, it's amazing to me. I think that they still give such a base.
Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands, I think she just passed the rule on to her son.
It's just, they do. I mean, it's a little hard. And in England, some people, my wife originally, she passed and everything, but when she was from England, and they used to say in England, among the folks and everything, one of the nicest things you could say about somebody was they know their place.
Ah, yes.
Isn't that interesting?
The classic class system.
Class system.
Yeah, big time.
And my name is
Them what knows.
Yeah.
Them what knows.
The goodness of a banger. No, but I'm Harold, and I was descended. I mean, Harold was the king of the Anglo-Saxons. They were Germanic. They had translated...
Saxony. Have you been to Saxony?
No, I don't think so.
Dresden area. Very nice, actually.
Yeah. But they originally come, but then and the beginning of the English language, which is heading for becoming... There's about 7,000 languages. But the beginning of the English language was with the Anglo-Saxons, and the king of the Anglo-Saxons was Harold.
Right. So
Harold Jr. He was Harold II. I'm Harold Jr.
Well,
and I'm an Anglo-Saxon.
Herein lies the problem. Okay, you've brought us right to the moment in history where
1066.
Well, no.
No, but that's when Harold got defeated by William.
But you went backwards and forwards.
Yeah, well, that goes back to the Anglo-Saxon and everything.
That's right.
But
1776 steam engine.
Yeah.
Which was a political revolution as well. Democracy, a democratic system in the new era. You know, not Greece anymore, but the United States.
Yeah, okay? It came up in the United States, so that's getting us up to the modern. But we still have an oligarchy,
and we had one.
That point being is, there's always been an oligarchy. Is there something in the structure of the universe that requires that there be an oligarchy? What ought the attitude toward the citizenry, or let's say the influential citizenry, or by ever mean they get to be part of the oligarchy, of them toward the people at large? And what would be the role? Is it something that could be subsumed in some new order of real functional democracy, or something in our time? But as we just said, it's always been there. It's still there. So it's not something that's going to be apparently or easily changed. It's been there for thousands of years, and it remains.
How does
everywhere in the world
oligarchy coexist in a democratic system? Is the question. It's not supposed to, is it?
Well,
it's not supposed to.
No, but it did, didn't it?
Well, it has.
Yeah, I mean, you had these landed people, and they had slaves.
And this is the issue.
In the United States, the founding fathers had slaves, and it was a slave system, and it was.
I understand.
You know, all
but
of that.
Today, it's still with us.
Okay.
And rule by the few, by definition, is antagonistic and anathema to representative democracy.
Yeah, but the representative democracy was very truncated. It was really a few people had the power.
Well,
and I mean, they tried to say some words. They tried to make a change.
White men who held land.
Yeah, right.
And don't forget and then it went to all white men.
Yeah.
And then after the Civil War, it meant to all men. And then in the 1920s, it included women. Right?
Not until 1920 were women included.
Right.
And don't forget, all those native peoples, the Sioux and the so forth, were just ruthlessly, every treaty was broken.
Sure.
So it wasn't some paradise or something.
Well, no,
but they had a view.
I would rather talk about the present. You know,
just
today, Bernie Sanders.
He announced,
He announced to run for president.
Yeah.
And I'm shocked, I tell you, because
there's gambling in California.
No, because he's one of the first modern American politicians, anyway, and maybe the first politician that's ever run for president during my lifetime who's openly used the O word, oligarchy. He's using it. He's talking about it. Okay, this is we're in for a showdown, I think. Okay, what's going to happen? All right, because it turns out that oligarchy is alive and well and quite strong right now,
and growing in its concentration of wealth and power,
and it's
to absurd potential.
Not just wealth power, but power over our lives. Okay, when it comes to the ability to snoop in every direction. Okay, this is an oligarch's wet dream. Okay, this is the Gestapo's wet dream. I submit to you that if they all had cell phones in 1989, the Stasi would have been able to prevent the Berlin Wall from coming down.
In East Germany,
they would have known who everybody was that had to be rounded up.
That was a terribly invasive thing they had in East Germany.
Okay, but now the power to really, look, I mean, Orwell is child's play compared to what we have now.
Okay? Really? Yeah.
Absolutely. Orwell, at least you could go to the woods and be away from the cameras, you know. Now the camera's in your pocket.
They just had a thing on public television last night about the cameras. And New York is the biggest. They got cameras everywhere around New York. If you're going
I think London is the biggest place.
No,
England has got more CATV cameras than anywhere else.
No, I think in terms of the overall effectiveness of it, New York is number one. England comes second, at least in this report on PBS.
Well, it may be a new thing.
And they got cameras everywhere. They're looking. You're walking down the street.
Well,
not only that, but eye recognition.
Not only that, but they've got software now that they use, which link the cameras up, so they'll follow you from one camera to the next, and they'll incorporate public facilities such as a security service, a public security service, with private cameras as well.
Right.
And for what? I mean, what is the level of terrorism and crime that justifies all this? I submit to you that it's not. It's actually oligarchy expressing itself, keeping tabs on everyone, because the American dream is in reverse.
Wait a minute. The American dream is what now?
In
what is
reverse.
the American? No, I know, but what is the American dream? Democracy for all.
Well,
participatory democracy.
As the American philosopher, what was his name? The comedian.
Mark Twain?
No, another comedian there. He passed away recently. As he said, they call it the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe in it.
It sounds. I don't know who that is. Randy Credico or something. Yeah.
No, not along those lines. I'll get the name in a moment. But where I'm at is that increasingly it makes more sense to stop and pull your head up from out of the sand and look at life and say, you know what? Oligarchy is throwing its weight around. Okay, that's why we've got these problems that should not exist in a democratic system. Why would anybody vote to go in reverse like our society has gone into in so many criteria?
When did it reverse from the direction it was taking, where it was going in the right direction?
It's pretty clear that economically, 1979.
1979, okay.
Economically. All the charts show that the middle class goes in reverse.
Yeah.
At least by an economic thing.
79, really.
Ronald Reagan came to town.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
with trickle-down economics.
Yeah, that's true. Right.
And this gets into the Powell Memorandum and the Trilateral Commission complaining in 1975 that there's just too much democracy, okay, and that sort of thing. And what happened was, I think, in my opinion, prior to the Great Depression and then during the Great Depression, with the threat of Soviet communism, the masses were waking up and saying, "Hey, wait a minute! We don't have to eat beans anymore. We should have a greater stake in the pie. We're doing a lot of work and so forth." And to blunt that, to try to get people to feel, look, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're going to make our system better than the Soviets. They didn't have a depression in the Soviet Union when we were having ours. Okay, everybody was working full tilt. Okay, so
you mean in the 30s? Is that true? Yeah, really? Okay, yeah. Go on.
They were building.
Yeah.
So we have this middle class being pumped up. They don't even have a pot over there. We've got 2 chickens in ours. What do you want to switch teams for? Don't cut our heads off like they did with their heads in Russia.
Yeah.
But Roosevelt comes in, saves democracy, saves capitalism. From the oligarchical class himself.
He saved it. He was of the oligarchy class, wasn't he? He was of it, and he saved capitalism.
He saved capitalism
as an economic system.
No question. How did he do it? Social Security. Okay, all these
that was
gimmies.
35.
Yeah, all these goodies for the masses,
right? To
placate them and say, "Look, don't throw us out. We can do it."
Well, they were probably faced with the problem.
I think Bismarck did it also in Germany. He had to. The socialists were very strong.
Yeah.
Okay. He had Social Security over there before we did.
They did. Yeah, that's right. You're absolutely right. That's true.
And what happened was, there's been this tug of war, particularly after the war. There's this incredible judo that happened during the Second World War. A lot of people who were wary of oligarchy went into World War II and came out just we're so great, saluting oligarchy, and the Cold War starts.
Well, they were saluting oligarchy.
Well,
you think, yeah.
In the form of our great system, as was
Eisenhower, when he was president, it was 92% income tax of wealth of the rich.
Right.
92%.
Roosevelt wanted to make it 100% during the Second World War because he said if we lose,
well, they nearly did because everything had to go into the war effort.
But that's all monetary tax. I mean, we didn't have an income tax in this country until 1913.
Yeah.
Same year that they created the Federal Reserve, and that's why. That's why, because somebody had to pay the interest now on the money that the Treasury was no longer creating, and that a private bank called the Federal Reserve was creating and charging us interest. So they had to collect that interest somehow. So they created the.
And they hadn't had interest in the past.
A government does not need to charge itself interest if it creates currency for itself.
Mm-hmm.
But the Federal Reserve Act abrogated that task to a privately held bank. The Federal Reserve Bank is a private bank, like Federal Express.
Why didn't they name it the Private Security
Bank? Because
they
people would become aware of the scam.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a scam.
A tremendous scam.
The establishment of the Federal Reserve is a scam. Is what you're saying?
Well, you tell me.
I don't.
Well, I'll lay it out. It's very simple.
Yeah, do by all means.
We need more money every day.
Yeah.
Because there are more things to be monetized.
And more people.
And more people every day. So we need money to grow. The money supply has to grow, right? Has to. Otherwise, everything would cost a penny.
Right.
Right? The new 2x4s that are being made by the thousands as we speak right now.
Yeah, right.
You know, if there's not more money to cover those, monetize them, then the same amount of money is going to have to be stretched to cover everything. So you need more money all the time.
Right.
A, that's a simple concept.
Okay.
B, money is no longer tied to gold or silver or anything. It's tied to nothing but you and me.
Well, wait a minute. Okay, go on.
No, it's tied to the full faith and credit of the United States government, which is you and I.
Well, full faith and credit of the United States government is a major thing and everything, but isn't it tied?
But it's not a physical thing.
How is it? Is it tied to individuals? Is it tied to the labor power of individuals or something?
It's tied to. It's fiat. It's tied. Well, let's just say it's not tied to a physical thing. So when money is created now,
as it had been to something that's rare, like gold in the old days,
Yes, and by the way, with fractional reserve banking, it was to an extent, a lot of it was tied to nothing as well. But the point is that when new money comes into existence right now, it just comes out of a spreadsheet. Okay, out of thin air. Okay.
Okay.
That is, according to the Constitution, the right of the Treasury to do that. To mint and coin, okay, and print, okay? That's the right of the Treasury. And the Treasury retains that right, but there's only something like 5% of money in the form of currency, bills and coinage. The rest is handled now by the Federal Reserve instead of the Treasury. But the Federal Reserve is a private bank. So what the Federal Reserve does is that when money is needed, if you need a mortgage, you go to your bank checks you out, tells the Fed, we got a new one here who can pay, and the Fed conjures the money up from no place and deposits it at your bank.
Well, how do they determine that? There's a risk that, you'd have to have a certain, if you had some past savings, you had a few $1 million, then you would be a good risk because you could meet that.
Risk for what?
Loss.
Of what?
Of the value of that which you're dealing with.
When the money was backed by gold,
well, okay,
we were taken off the gold standard. Yes.
Why? Why did we go off the gold?
Well, there's a limited amount of gold. There's a relatively limited amount. The economy is growing so large that but you've just.
But the gold standard was there from Venice, early Venice. I mean, they have a way of having a system.
But we've outgrown it. It's just not enough.
And then
besides which, it could be cornered. And
why did we go off gold?
Well, Richard Nixon took us off it. Right?
Yeah, he did in '74.
Right.
Yeah, right.
I suspect it's because the economy was growing to the point where there wasn't enough gold to back.
And what was the rationale for doing it differently than when you had gold as a standard? What was the rationale for going into the system that we now have by the people who were setting it up?
Probably because they realized that people would go along with it even if it wasn't backed by gold, and we have.
Well, what is it backed by then? Does it have anything to do with backing production? That has the thing that is produced has value?
I think if you allow me.
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
by all means.
You're talking over the point, which I think you'll find very interesting.
Okay, by all means. Okay? By all means.
Follow this. Okay.
Yeah.
When you go to the bank to make a loan, we're all raised to think that the bank is recycling somebody's savings by lending it back out to you.
Well, okay, that I got that. Yeah, this is George Bailey's savings and loan.
It's not true because we hear all the time Americans aren't saving any money anymore, right? Okay, they're and precious little.
Some people are saving and getting more and more money all the time.
On what rate of interest?
Well, no, but follow it through because I really want to.
So let's follow it through. So actually, though, money is created all the time when new debts are created. Because the Federal Reserve will create the money in its accounts to give to your bank from nothing to monetize what you need done.
Monetize what you need done, including in that rubric or in that thing, the production of something.
Right,
the production of something by the effort.
Let me
and that could be linking it to the labor that the person represents, other than gold.
But let me.
And so they were related to all. That's why they have to have.
You're close.
Yeah.
Allow me to finish because I want to hear your take on this. Actually, let's use the example of a mortgage first, okay, and then we'll talk about a government bond, okay.
Okay.
So a mortgage, all right. They've got you. They say you could. They make the money from nothing. They put it in your account. Okay. Now you're paying interest.
Okay.
You're paying interest, which they didn't make.
Yeah.
They only conjured the principal. Okay, now you're paying interest on that. So you have to go out in the economy, find money to replace what they gave you.
No, well, why would they give? Well, wait, if I may, if I could talk,
sure.
I mean, let's just talk about things a little more abstractly and see how that relates. It'd be very important because this is an important issue.
Extremely important.
In the world, you have a government and you have a private sector. And you have production forces going on. You have a lot of natural resources. You have
I'm not talking about that.
But I wanted to
I'm just talking about money.
Period. That's what I'm talking about.
Whether it's used to monetize production or trees or a vacation or a house or whatever.
Well,
money itself.
Okay, well, I know. But the money is being produced. Now, back up a little bit. I want to back up. The thing is that in the world, you have these two things. And whatever it is, those who have past savings, that is, past savings, I don't know, valuable assets or money or something like that, diamonds or gold, those who have past savings are able to put up what they call collateral for a loan for, let's just say, a business proposition. This is like in the private sector, a business venture which has feasibility studies and all the rest of it. Let me finish. They do that. So they can put up past savings in order to be able to buy an asset that's going to pay for itself out of its future earnings, not from past savings.
A mortgage is the asset is the house itself.
You're talking about mortgage, not mortgage, saying you're going to build a factory. And you've got the ability.
That's corporate. That's corporate lending. I asked you if I could just say, from a mortgage point of view and a government point of view, let's leave the corporations out. But it follows the same
private
model.
sector. No,
but it follows.
I'm trying to make the point.
A house is a private sector.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right.
Okay,
all right.
A house is a private sector.
All right. Let me say this then. Let me stick with me a minute. If those who have the past savings, that would be the oligarchs, are able to do that, then you're stuck forever with the internal class struggle.
It's a lot worse than that. It's a lot worse than that.
Yeah, but let me make the point first.
It's not their savings that's being lent out.
No. What if I'm trying to say they can do that? The people who don't have that can't do that. Now, but if you make a business investment, it's going to pay for itself out of future earnings. You're tapping into future earnings of a productive asset that you're putting up collateral for.
The point you're missing.
Or you have it. Now, that's the thing that's limited to those, or has been limited to those, who have past savings. There's nothing that
There's
allows
not enough past savings in the world to cover the growth in the economy. You need to create new money.
All right.
Okay?
So you need to
all the time.
All right.
And if that new money is not backed by gold,
by what? No, backed by the future earnings of what that you're finding. Let's say it's a water project, or it's a highway, or it's infrastructure, or something. If it's backed by the future, or if it's a private sector, or if it's a business that's going to make profit, it's going to grow, it's going to pay for its cost, and it's going to make profit off that. You want to touch into the future.
What you say is true if.
In the world, the way the world works.
What you're missing is that, yes, what you just described is accurate if there is something to begin with that is funding the project. If you had bars of gold, okay, that you lent to somebody to build their water project, then when the water project took in capital, you could replace the bars of gold. Yes, you're right, but we don't work that way anymore.
Well, no, because we've run out of gold.
Right.
So then you have to have but the process is the same.
No, it's not.
No, well, I'm suggesting is the major thing that's involved is you're going to have the ability to produce progress and to produce...
To repay?
No. To reduce and tap into the future earnings of an asset. You have an asset. If you get
the reason to tap into the future earnings of an asset is to repay what you borrowed.
No. Okay, wait a minute. Let me spell it out a little bit.
Sure.
In the coming up in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and all that, the major way that the masses, for want of a better term, lower middle class or middle class or lower or working or whatever, were able to build up what is called net worth. The major way that was done...
I'm not talking about net worth.
No, but let me make the point.
Money's different.
No, but let me make the point.
Capital.
The major way in which they built up some capital, the way they got progress, they would buy a house. Mm-hmm. Everything was going up in value. They'd buy it in year 1. It was worth $10,000 in year 10. The value was going up steadily, and that's the way most of the middle class or lower middle class people were able to get some real net worth by buying into the future. Okay? That's the way they got a leg up and so forth.
The oligarchy makes a much better leg up because of the following. And if you give me 1 minute, I'll be done. Okay. Look, those houses that are being bought and have been bought since we went off the gold standard at least, okay, those houses were monetized from nothing. Okay.
I'm trying to understand what that means.
What that means is if you are not creating money based on gold, which we're not doing anymore.
All right. What are we basing it on?
Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing.
No, but I'm trying to tell you
that
there's a larger context to see it in.
No.
What is being based.
You've given me the forest. You're giving me the forest, and I'm trying to show you one single tree, and you won't let me do it. I wish I could show you.
Okay. Go on then.
You've got the forest, no question. You've covered it very greatly. What I'm trying to tell you is, if the money is not backed by anything tangible anymore. It is backed by the power of the Federal Reserve to create it, conjure it from no place.
Okay, maybe that's a good thing. That might be a good thing, is what I'm saying.
But follow the logic then, and you tell me if it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so they take that nothing, put it into your bank's account. Your bank funds your checking account. You pay the guy who...
You're talking about a consumer. You're not talking about an investment.
We can talk about an investment too, but
it's a different thing.
Much simpler. No, it's not. Okay, so that money is given to the person who just sold you the house. Okay, you've got a physical house, a tangible asset now, and you're paying the bank back for the nothing that they gave you.
Well, you could go back to creating the fucking, excuse my language, house. Somebody built the house.
Harold.
And there was labor involved in that. And that has value.
Excuse me. If you don't pay the bank back in the past, the bank would be out the gold. But today, they're not out anything.
So how are we going to
They didn't lose anything, and they get your house for nothing. Yes,
I think it's a truncated. It's less than you said forest. It's less than a comprehensive understanding of the way the world works.
It's
based
upon. It's so simple. It is so simple that people don't get it, and apparently you're one of them. Look, they made the money from nothing. They lent it to you to buy a house.
Wait a minute. You're talking to me as a consumer.
I'm talking to anyone
What
who's
about
listening.
They lent the money to me to build a house?
Same
No,
thing.
build the house.
Sure, same thing.
Okay, and the house is worth $10,000, and then in 5 years it's worth $100,000.
Right. And
that's growth.
And you stopped paying your mortgage because you lost your job.
Why? No, what job? I have nothing to do with the job.
Have you ever heard the term foreclosure?
Of course.
Okay, it's happening all over the place.
Yeah, I know
me.
it has
Trust
been.
me. Okay. And
it shouldn't.
But what is happening is what you're missing is all those homes are being taken by the bank.
Well,
who lost nothing because they didn't put gold up for it anymore. They put air up for it. So this is an oligarchical tool where this wealth is flowing to the top. Not only that, but they also got interest on the nothing that they created.
Right.
And they're doing it to governments. Okay?
Yeah.
They're doing it to Greece. This is what's going on in the world. You need to understand. This is sovereign debt. It's a sovereign debt crisis. Okay? It is Thomas Piketty, your hero, talks about it. These are ill-gotten gains. Okay? Interest being charged on money that was fabricated from nothing.
That's not the way I read Piketty.
Yeah, he talks
As it happens. I don't read it that way, for whatever it's worth. We mentioned him in the other program. All the leaders of the world are buying it. And you got presidents, you got all kinds of political parties, you got all kinds of major bankers and people like that are involved in this whole thing. And Piketty is just simply saying the manufacture, or the production of goods and services is galloping toward the obviation of labor input to production by the masses of the people, and is going over into robotics now, and that the means of production of goods and services are just becoming the point. The major problem is you have a tremendous capability to provide goods and services to the people of the world.
The interest, interest alone, not the production, the interest on the capital alone. Okay.
Well, you keep wanting to. No. Oh, yeah. He does. Okay.
He does.
Fair enough. Okay. But his major thing is that they don't have a way of distributing, because the labor in production is diminishing, as you have with cybernetics and so forth, is diminishing, and they don't have a way of distributing effective buying power to the masses of the people to clear the market of what can be produced.
They could create effective buying. You hear.
That's the problem that the major leaders of the world are concerned with.
You hear.
They are.
It is a scam. It is a huge scam. Okay, we need a new bridge across the Hudson. Right. The last one was what, in the 40s.
Well, that'd be
George
private.
Washington Bridge?
That'd be public sector.
I understand.
Yeah.
So how does the money?
Things in the private
how does
sector
the money
too.
come to build that bridge? The public goes begging to the Federal Reserve. Okay. That creates bonds that are sold.
Well, bonds are usually pretty secure, yeah.
Well, yeah.
They're supposed to be.
The Federal Reserve creates cash from nothing, gives it to the banks, and then the banks take that same nothing cash and buys bonds with it. Okay? And that